Kia ora team, welcome along to the Taupō Half Marathon Course Guide. These are my tips on how to pace appropriately to achieve your sub 1 hour 30, 1 hour 40, 1 hour 50 or 2 hour goal. And this video is for anyone taking part in the Taupō Half Marathon next weekend. I'm going to be covering off a number of key things, some course insights, the pacing advice, and performance tips so you can optimize your day regardless of what your goal is for the event. Let's have a quick look at the course. Going to start on Tongariro Street and running out to 5 Mile Bay, and then you're coming back predominantly on the Great Lake Pathway, doubling back through and under the course there and following it all the way around and back to the finish line at the Great Lake Centre. The terrain down the bottom here, it looks like they're steep hills. They're not very big hills. There's only small elevation changes and it's over 3 or 4 kilometres each of the inclines. So it looks a lot worse based on the scale. It's not a overly hilly course. Yes, there are some undulations. I'm not going to lie to you about that. So general strategy for the course, nice consistent effort throughout the day is going to be your key to success. Start conservatively and build that pace throughout the event, allowing you to get close to the finish line so you can finish nice and strong. What I recommend is my 1/3 pacing strategy. The first third of the event, the first 7 kilometres, it's going to be a nice steady pace. That will take you through to the second aid station, and that's located on Lake Terrace just prior to getting to the roundabout with the East Taupō arterial route. From there, you're going to increase your pace slightly for the second third of the event, so the second 7 kilometres, and that'll take you through the loop until you hit the underpasses under Pukunamu Road and Lake Terrace again. And then the final 7 kilometres from that point is going to be your fastest pace during the event. If you find yourself getting close to town and you're still relatively fresh, give it a bit more oomph, push it a little bit faster for the final few kilometres. The 2K to go mark is when you run off the Great Lake Pathway back onto Lake Terrace Drive on that run-in parallel to the lakefront with all the motels. So if you're aiming for a sub 2 hour strategy, you're going to need to average 5 minutes 41 per kilometre for the entire 21.1 kilometres. The key to doing that successfully is to start calm with a steady pace. Focus on a quick cadence and a nice tall posture. That tall posture helps open up the airway, allows you to get air and oxygen into the lungs so you don't go into oxygen debt early. Run your own race and don't get swept up of faster running early on. My tips for the 1/3 pacing strategy is to start with the aim of 5 minutes 50 per kilometre for the first 7Ks. Then increase 10 seconds per kilometre for the middle 7 kilometres, and then the final 7 kilometres aim for around that 5:30 per kilometre mark, and that will achieve your sub 2 hour goal. To run a sub 150, you're going to need to average 5 minutes 12 per kilometre. Don't try and bank time early, stick to the pace. Stay strong through the aid stations and also keep an eye out for your pace drifting off late in the race. Aim for 5:20 for that opening 1/3. The second 7 kilometre block, aim for 5:10 per kilometre, and then sub 5 minutes for the final 7 kilometres all the way home. For those of you wanting to run under 140, that's an average of 4 minutes 44 per kilometre. Stay relaxed early, hold your rhythm, use the pace groups if possible, and focus on that last 5 kilometres. Target times, I recommend 4:55 for that first 7 kilometres. The middle third of the event, aim for 4:45, and then another 10 seconds per kilometre quicker for the final 7Ks. And for those of you wanting to run a sub 130, that's a pace of 4 minutes 15 per kilometre. Start controlled, strong through the middle, and then tough and powerful through to the finish line. Know when to surge, when to sit in with the groups you're running with, and try and stick to some dedicated heart rate or power targets if that's what you train with. The rest of us using pace, First 7 kilometres aim for 4 minutes 25 per kilometre. The middle third aiming for 4:15 per kilometre, and then increasing to that to 4:05 for the final 7 kilometres on the way home. So here's some mental tips for race day success. I've got a self-psych form that will help you prepare mentally for the event. There's a link in the description. Just print it off, hand write out the answers, and plan and you'll structure your race working through that document. It's only a few pages long. Sit down, find some quiet space the night before or 2 nights out, and just have some time out. Just plan things slowly, methodically through the race, including all the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? If you've mentally prepared for those outcomes, if the worst was to happen, you know how you're going to handle it. You've got a plan in place and you can just execute that plan. This will help increase your chance of achieving your goals, and it's a fantastic tool. I've used it many times over the last probably 15, 20 years, and most of my athletes use it prior to their key races as well. I recommend having a few mantras. The key one I always go to is when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. I'm going to repeat that to myself a few times, but there's a few other things that might be more suitable for you, and that's your opportunity to plan them with the self-psych form. Visualize your success and also break that race into the chunks. Now, I recommend the 1/3 chunks of the event, but you can also break it into 5Ks and then have a fifth little bit extra after the fourth 5K. You can break it into 2 and a bit 10Ks. You can break that race into different chunks, maybe even based around the aid stations. What you use is up to you. If it's worked and has been successful for you in the past, feel free to use that as well. Now, the weather on the day, it's forecast to be a nice, fine Taupō day, but Taupō in August is always going to be chilly to start with. 4 degrees is the overnight low, but it is expecting a high of 12 throughout the day. It's going to warm up. Make sure you dress appropriately, but also be prepared for any weather conditions. Forecast now may change by the time race day turns. So nutrition-wise, make sure you have a healthy, nutritious meal the night before. Load up plenty of carbohydrates. Also consume plenty of water. Get that fluid in there. For every gram of carbohydrate your body stores, you need 3 grams of water to successfully store that. Throughout the event, there's a number of aid stations. They're going to have both R-line and water. R-line being the electrolyte drink. If you do need some topping up with some energy, particularly later in the race, that is a good option. Although I do recommend, if you've used it in training, that'll work best for you because you know what it's like. But if you're in a desperate situation, the advice of never try something new on race day, I would throw that out the window. If you've bonked, if you ran out of energy, just get that electrolyte, get that carbohydrate in there. Otherwise, stick to what you know, run comfortably, run within your limits, and push that pace towards the end. Race morning, make sure you've got everything you need. Your running shoes, your cap, your sunglasses, your race number. I always like to go to the event with my race number already on my singlet, and often wearing that singlet, cap, running shoes, maybe even carrying my race shoes if I'm going to warm up and race in different shoes. I had an athlete recently at an event. Unfortunately, she left her shoes behind in her accommodation. She was wearing her warm-up shoes. Turned out she had plenty of time because she left early to go get those shoes again and had a successful race running a PB. Although the first thing, it was a little bit stressful. So make sure you've got what you need. Make sure you have a sufficient warm-up for your goal. If you're wanting a fast race, make sure you have a thorough warm-up and conclude that warm-up prior to about 9:15 because you need to be at the start line in order to listen to that race briefing. And then shortly after the race briefing is finished, you'll be starting at 9:30. So start your warm-up early enough. If your goals are more recreational in nature, a basic warm-up will do, and you can use those first few kilometers to warm into it. Be aware that as with any race start, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to use the toilet facilities. So make sure you go join the queue early enough so then you can go out and do your warm-up once you've been to the bathroom. Leading into the finish, you want to finish strong. Dig deep for the last 2 to 3 Ks. So when you go past the mobile station along the Great Lake Pathway and making your way back onto Lake Terrace, somewhere along there, depending on how fresh you're feeling, start picking that pace up. And then with 1K to go, before you turn back onto Tongariro Street, start giving it everything you've got. There's plenty of aid stations out on the course, but use the aid stations as a reference. The key one being that second aid station at the 7K mark on Lake Terrace, just prior to the East Taupō Arterial Road. The 14K mark isn't nice. It's sort of partway between a couple of aid stations, but the underpasses under Pukanamu and Lake Terrace are the key place, and start picking the pace up a little bit more there as you lead into the final third of the event. So for those of you that want to smash your next half marathon, I've got some training plan options for you. So I've got my project series, my project 2 hour, my project 1 hour 50, my project 140, and finally the project 130 for those runners wanting to achieve those times. Now I do have performance criteria to be eligible to start those training plans, and there are options for 10 and 20 weeks depending on how far to your next half marathon. If you're after a strength training plan to complement your running, my Run Strong training plan, build strength for faster, more efficient running, is the way to go. The most popular one there is my 12-week option with 3 gym sessions per week, but there are also longer and shorter options with 2 or 3 gym sessions per week. Starting the 11th of August, I've got my 12-week plan, building athletes for the Auckland Half Marathon. That is a fantastic option if you're looking at that for an event. Join the squad, get on board, and have your best race. But if you want something a little bit more personalized, send me a direct message on Facebook or Instagram. I'm easy to find on both. On Instagram, I'm coach_Ray_NZ, or send me an email, coachray@coachray.nz, and we can organise a time to have a chat and discuss your goals, because I've got options to build your fitness in time, regardless of what event it is and how long until it. Those of you racing this weekend, have an amazing race. All the best for it. If your race went amazingly and you worked using the self-psych form, feel free to add a comment. Let me know how your race went and what particular features you enjoyed. Add those comments down below. I really appreciate hearing how you got on.